Welcome to the President and CEO Focus on the Middle Market podcast series, where President and CEO founder Paul Stukel discusses middle market issues with business leaders from across the nation. Today, Paul speaks with Stephen Keathley, National Technology Leader of Deloitte Growth Enterprise Services, about the increasing strategic importance of technology to middle market companies.
The report you issued was interesting in several ways. I guess we should probably start with the cloud and how that's being applied to middle market businesses. Obviously, cloud is not a new thing. It's sort of new, but it's been around for a bit now, and everyone knows about it. One of the things that intrigued me was it was really focused. The application of the cloud in the middle market seems to still be quite focused on the sort of finance and accounting sector or functions, as opposed to the more the manufacturing side and perhaps the supply chain side. Am I reading that right, or am I all wet?
No, I think, Paul, I think that's still right. I think what was interesting in the survey is even though the sort of the traditional back office functions are still dominating the cloud world, the level of, I guess, investment going into the cloud, as well as the number of firms that say they are evolving from, the number of firms that are saying they're still experimenting with is up, but the number of firms that say they are getting to maturity in the cloud is also up. I think it's as much of anything an indication that those areas were the first to really come out into the market with cloud services, so they're obviously more mature. But we are starting to see evidence of other types of services dominating the cloud. One of the interesting intersections that popped up, analytics is part of the survey. We put a big emphasis this year in advanced predictive analytics, where you need, for example, data scientists. Those people are hard even for large companies to acquire. So we're starting to actually see companies that do have data scientists on board offer cloud services or offer different types of services to other companies using their data scientists. One of our examples, Lineage Logistics, is a good example of companies that are doing that.
Right, and on the point of analytics, actually one of our clients it's a predictive sales, is basically a sales and pricing predictive analytics. That's actually another sort of new horizon, and there's probably, 5 to 10 companies out there providing that service at a very high level, and can do it at an enterprise level too, where effectively they're using the cloud and sort of heavy-duty analytics in CRMs to provide salespeople out in the field, basically pricing, predictive pricing, which is kind of neat. It's some pretty neat stuff. And the sense of reluctance to really go whole hog on the cloud in the mid-market, I guess to a certain extent is understandable, because you do have legacy systems, and the headache, if nothing else, and middle market companies, as you know, they're stressed for time, much less resources. Much less monetary resources. So I guess there does seem to be some reluctance to really go all the way with cloud. But are there other things that came out of the data that you see that are really holding mid-market companies back from truly embracing cloud as really the base infrastructure of the company?
Well, I think the one that keeps coming up over and over again, and we hear about it in the news all the time, is obviously the whole issue of cybersecurity, right? So cybersecurity is an interesting one in that I think it does create some uncertainty for a lot of companies, especially ones that are just looking at going into the cloud, or ones that want to look at new entrants in the cloud. But on another sense, the cloud companies, and particularly the larger, more mature ones, they're betting their business on their ability to provide secure environments to their clients. So in one respect, it is a risk for companies, but in another respect, if they're careful about it, they can actually get enhanced cyber capabilities by going into the cloud with the more established vendors. The other things that we're seeing that are I would call barriers or challenges that the companies are still working through it's the whole integration challenge, right? So it's still very difficult to go whole hog into the cloud for all of your systems. So you're going to have these hybrid environments where you've got cloud solutions that need to integrate with your on-premise solutions, and the technologies and the techniques for doing that are evolving very rapidly, but it's still a challenge. It's something for companies to work through.
Yeah. The sort of the intersection. We're kind of in this almost perfect storm technologically, and you guys have identified three of the major elements of that. Obviously, the cloud, analytics, and cybersecurity. I mean, those things sort of all go together, and as your answers have already made clear. You could probably add Internet of Things to that at some point, right? Because that's going to touch on the machine-machine conversations. That's going to impact all of those things when you think about it. You're in this sort of perfect storm technologically. And for a mid-market company, that's really challenging, obviously. And you're also dealing with just the day-to-day stuff, and you're dealing with legacy. In terms of the cybersecurity side, that's obviously becoming a much bigger issue. I mean, what are the sort of the main elements that you guys found that mid-market companies are worrying about, or more importantly, probably should be worrying about?
Yeah, it was interesting. Obviously, with everything going on in the news, cybersecurity is a top of mind issue with not only middle market IT executives, but also with senior executives, and they're focusing on it and investing in it at a much higher rate than they have been. That said, I think a number of our respondents acknowledged that they needed to be even better than they are. So I think the interesting thing that I like to point to and want people to understand is that when you look at, for example, what's going on in the cyber world, and you look at pursuing cloud strategies, I mentioned earlier that the big cloud vendors can provide technology-based cyber defense capabilities that are much more sophisticated than even a lot of large organizations can afford to invest in. The real question is, how does that affect your overall cybersecurity profile, not only the technical aspects, but also the human and cultural aspects of cybersecurity, and what's it do to your overall cyber profile, and how do you adjust your policies in order to take advantage of those capabilities you may be able to get in the outside world.
And to move to analytics again, real quick, that I guess the overall feeling I got from the report, I mean, just from the various examples and the various conclusions and such, was that a lot of what's going on right now, both in terms of cloud, cybersecurity, and even analytics, so much of the technology now is outward bound. In other words, it's outward facing.
Yep.
It's customer relationships, and those kind of things, which is understandable because that's where your immediate return is going to come from. Do you see it changing in all of those areas? Do you see that moving into more utilization of these tools for the actual production side of things? Because they're all applicable, even human resources. I mean, I had a very interesting conversation with an analytics guy who runs he's the CEO of an analytics company, saying that people are using it for internal purposes like human resources, and obviously using it for manufacturing capabilities. I mean, do you see right now all the focus seems to be on customer relations and marketing and sales, and that's great. Do you see these things moving sort of deeper into the business?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there were a couple of examples in the report of companies. I think I mentioned Lineage Logistics and what they're doing. They started using analytics to improve the cold chain, the supply chain for cold goods that they operate for their clients. But then what they also discovered is that they were uncovering inefficiencies in their clients' operations, and so they actually have used that capability to better advise their clients and improve the overall cold chain. So I think that's a good example. New Relic is doing that around availability of their customers' information systems. So it's a different form of production, but again, I think we are starting to see good examples of that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting time. This wasn't a focus of your report, but I want to go back to the Internet of Things. That's one area that, first of all, not a lot of people quite understand, I don't think. And number two, it seems to present a lot of possibilities and a lot of risks, seems to me. What's your feeling on that? And I know that wasn't part specifically of your report, but so perhaps maybe it's anecdotal. But, I mean, do you see mid-market companies expressing interest in that, or is that just not on the radar right now?
That it's funny you mentioned that. This is going into how we sort of planned our survey. We had a number of pretty lengthy debates around Internet of Things and whether or not to make that a focal point of the survey, and so we did some preliminary research. That's an area that as a firm we're obviously tracking very closely to see where it's going. It's one of ours. So there's an item that was highlighted in our overall tech trends report this year. But what we're seeing in the middle market is that's where cloud was, say, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. In the middle market, they're looking at it, they're thinking about it. There's examples. Obviously, there's always examples of early adopters. But right now, Internet of Things isn't something that they're investing in very heavily at this point. And I think it's, as you said earlier, people are still trying to figure out what the opportunity is. And obviously, established middle market firms have to place careful bets with their investments. They don't have quite the same risk profile as, say, a larger firm with a big R&D budget. So I think they're still watching this area carefully.
Another thing that was it's more, this is more meta, I suppose, but you make a point in the report about how senior management is really becoming much more aggressive in supporting and leading technology, because as anyone who knows anything about the middle market knows that it's sometimes you don't have a CIO, sometimes you don't have a CTO, or whatever the term is. And it seems like middle market companies are beginning to really realize that technology is not just a necessary evil, as it were. It's now an advantage. I mean, am I reading that right?
No, yes, you absolutely are reading that right, and I think that was one of the real interesting points coming out of it. I think we said. That we reported 48% of middle market business leaders, not technology leaders, are viewing technology as a driver of competitive advantage, either opening up new markets or better penetrating existing markets or gaining operational efficiencies. And that's up a full 7 points from last year. It's 41% last year. That's a fairly significant jump in 1 year. If you think about where we are in the whole technology and business evolution of things, we thought that was probably one of the most significant points to come out of the survey.
Be sure to check back for future episodes of the President and CEO Focus on the Middle Market podcast series. Thanks for listening.